Good morning, everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining us at the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative Quarterly Meeting. We're going to get started. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Ashley Casiello. I am the Senior Consultant for Workforce Development at UChicago Medicine, and I'm one of the steering committee members for this collaborative. See everybody getting introduced to each other in the chat. So that's great. Continue to do that while we get kicked off and go over our agenda. A note from April real quick, which I'll just read out loud. So this meeting's being recorded. The recording and the slides will all be posted on our website tomorrow. And there's a link in the chat for that. If you join a little bit later and you missed that, feel free to reach out and during the meeting, and I can send you the link for our website if you join a little bit later. And all past event recordings and information about future events can be found there. So if you haven't joined us for a while, or if this is your first time, the mission of the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative is to unite employers and industry partners to support inclusive healthcare workforce, provide accessibility for the underemployed and unemployed, and to develop responses to respond to the evolving and complicated needs of the healthcare labor force today. We have three strategic pillars, the first being local and targeted hiring, second is education and training, and the third is retention and career pathways. So the CHWC is an employer-led sector partnership, which means that employers sit at the table and we are informed and consulted by kind of our larger partners. You can see the employers listed there and also on our website. Today for the agenda, we'll be talking about giving an update on the Youth Pathways Committee as well as the Good Jobs Challenge. We'll also have a learning agenda discussion where we report out on peer learning events that just occurred and a presentation of the learning agenda. There'll also be some breakout discussions. So for that segment, we will have 15-minute breakout discussions and participants can share their insights and ideas on those three learning event topics that we identified for this year. We also will have some presentations from partners, including UIC's Clinical Lab Development Program and the Civic Committee Inclusive Hiring Initiative. So the UIC Clinical Lab Development Program is a new apprenticeship program for lab techs, and they're seeking additional partners. Rhiannon will be introducing that. And the Civic Committee initiative is focused on employing and retaining alumni from community violence intervention programs. So they're seeking more partners, and we'll hear more about them then. So I will pass it off to Anna Yankala, Director of Strategic Workforce Initiatives at Health and Medicine Policy Research Group, to give an update on the Youth Pathways Committee.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Ashley said, my name is Anna. I work with Health and Medicine, and I also facilitate our sister table to the CHWC, the PHWC, the Public Health Workforce Collaborative. And our two tables together co-convene the Health Career Youth Pathways Committee. And this pathway committee is focused, you can see our vision here, to ensure that all Chicagoland youth can explore and succeed in quality health careers that include thriving wages, benefits, and a recognition of the profession's communal and societal importance. Got a couple typos there, we gotta fix that. And we are really excited because this group had historically been seated within CHWC and had done a lot of work over the last couple of years with putting together events, with getting the Speakers Bureau up and running. And when the PHWC, when we kind of joined forces here, because we realized that our young people should know the whole, the borders between healthcare and public health are very porous, especially for young people. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of all the opportunities. So you can see the mission there, and you can read that when we send out the slides. I'm not going to read through that. But right now, so we did go through a strategic planning process over the last couple of months to recenter, reground, and re-strategize where we want to go as a committee. And we are currently focusing our efforts in two specific areas. The first is really focused on serving our working group committee members. So we have members of the Youth Career Pathways ecosystem and health careers sitting at our table. And we want to make sure that this committee is a space for our committee members to learn from one another, to share best practices, to build connections so that we can have warm handoffs and collaboration across our programs and learn from one another. So that's really focused on making sure that our ecosystem is strong, is communicative, and is responsive to the needs of our membership. The second group that we have is really focused on serving our youth, really focused on creating the shared tools and resources that we need to help support our youth in navigating the health career landscape. So we're going to be working on documenting and centralizing all the different tools and resources that are available, making sure that those are all integrated into Rapid IL's landing page. We're really excited that they're one of our core partners. And our hope is to be able to equip both youth and the champions who work with them, teachers, counselors, parents, coaches, religious leaders, whomever, with these tools and resources so that when they're talking to a young person who's trying to figure out where to go, they know that there is a suite of options available for them to help them navigate that process. So right now we are really excited to have these very strong projects that we're working on, and we want to bring you in to help us. So we are actively recruiting new members for this committee. So if either of those projects sounded of interest to you, we'd love to connect and see how we can work together. And we are also creating a youth advisory council within the Youth Pathways Committee. And this will be comprised of young people who will help inform our processes to make sure that the toolkits we put together are relevant and meaningful and accessible for our young people. So for either joining as a committee member yourself, or if you know of young people or know of someone who works with young people, that would be a great person to talk to recruit them for our Youth Advisory Council. Please reach out to Matt McClintock, who's on my team here at Health and Medicine. I'll drop his email in the chat. We'd love to connect and we'd love to work with you. And I will pass it over to Sasha. For Good Jobs Challenge update.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sasha Ongtenko. I'm the Pathway Program at Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. So I do work with April and then specifically focus on the which was a body of funding awarded to the Chicagoland to 4 sectors, one of which was the healthcare sector. So this is one of the opportunities in which members of the brought in to implement programming, get access to, on top of the convenings that we have each month and learning from one another, actually. And you'll see with the
sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Your sound is coming in.
Your sound is coming in and out.
Now we're echoing.
I apologize. Let's see. I'm not sure why that.
Give it another try, but if
Give it another try, but if
I'll jump in.
it's happening, I'll jump in. Sounds good. And I apologize. Don't know what's going on. I hear everyone okay on me. So the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative, the Good Jobs Challenge funding alongside Anna Yankelev's Health and Medicine Policy Research Group, one of 4 sectors. And so has a body of funding. And on the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce, we are here gathered today. We are wanting to provide an update on the Assistant Pathway Program Hub that we have used, which is bringing nursing assistant programs across at currently 5 hospitals. This is an opportunity to build capacity, an opportunity to allow employees.
It keeps happening.
So to jump in.
Yeah, feel free to add in the chat.
Well, I'm sorry, everybody.
Okay. No worries. It sounds like there's something maybe that's coming in like at an equal interval. Anyway, as Sasha was saying, we are recipients of a large grant, the Good Jobs Challenge. Health is one of 4 sectors. Anna, who runs the Public Health Workforce Collaborative, is also managing some of those funds. In CHWC, we are using those funds to train nursing assistants and to upskill nursing assistants to reach the next rung on the career ladder. So we are working with 5 different hospital systems shown here, who all had, CNA training programs in place. So we are building upon those models that have already been tested, and there's experience to learn from. And we're bringing all of those employers together in a community of practice to talk to one another, share best practices, and then introduce some additional program interventions that help to strengthen job quality for nursing assistants, and in particular, strengthen their ability to move forward on a career pathway. So that involves us convening career exploration workshops, panel discussions where folks can hear from people who used to be CNAs and have moved on, so on and so forth. So you might not be able to see the slide well, but it will come out later. This gives some of the details on each of the different program models at our 5 different hospital systems. They're all recruiting from our target populations, primarily folks living in neighborhoods of disinvestment with higher rates of unemployment, higher rates of violence, Black and Brown community members. We're using 3 different training providers, including Oak Point University, Tugendorf, and City College's Malcolm X. Some are employing folks from the get-go. Some are doing an apprenticeship model where folks are earning a wage as they're training and then earn a promotion or a wage increase once they are fully on the job. All of the models include supportive services and include some career exploration. And as Sasha was going to provide, these are sort of our updates right now, that we are working on the set of common program features that are going to be consistent across all 5 of the employer models. One is doing a standard pre and post participant evaluation, so we can continually improve the experience of the participants during cohorts as they move along over the next year and more than a year. We'll also be doing supplemental career exploration programming with content that's designed by CHWC and provided to all the participants across those 5 systems. And so there might be opportunities for everyone in CHWC to participate and help us in designing those, and we'll let you know. And finally, offering job placement support to any programs, program graduates. There are some models where the policies of the hospital preclude them from hiring up front or offering a guaranteed position. So we want to make sure that everyone who goes through the program is able to receive some hiring support. And we'll be talking about those soon. So Sasha, anything you want to add? We can hear you for the most part.
Yes, thank you, April, for jumping in. The exciting and differentiating things about what we are proposing with the structure of a hub is really the collaboration piece. What we're all experiencing here in our quarterly convenings and in the events and in between, specifically under the hub, really incentivize hospital systems in a competing environment to actually work together in service of the sector, and centering the worker experience is something that we feel is what good jobs is to do and allowing hospital systems to do. And specifically even for it's already been a very experience in seeing how certain graduates or certain individuals rather are prepped and ready to go for one nursing assistant program that there's that how those participants are going to be able to connect with another hospital again, so that we are prioritizing their experience that they're faced with right now and having hospital systems work together. Those individuals seek the training, get the training, and are really as one sector versus 5 individuals. What we are looking forward to sharing more about. And sorry again that my audio has been in and out, but We look forward for a lot of these different features and supporting the learning from them in future quarterly meetings.
Okay, thanks, Sasha. And yes, you all hear more updates about this project as it goes on. So now we're going to move on and talk about our learning agenda for 2024. We, as you know, reflecting over the last year with this group and with our steering committee, we've decided to lean into peer learning more this year. We'd like to host more learning events and provide more in-person opportunities for peer learning. So we did host an employer peer learning session in February. We had about 25 attendees. We split up into 3 different breakout rooms based on our strategic pillars, being local and targeted hiring, career and education and training providers, and retention and career pathways. And in those groups, we came up with lists of learning topics that we're interested in diving into this year. So based on what came out of that employer peer learning session, and also what we discussed in a brief activity at our December quarterly meeting, I've come up with 4 learning event topics to pursue this year. So we'll do at least one event for each of these 4 topics, if not more, and we might do more on additional topics. So the first thing that really came to light out of both of those meetings was best practices for supporting retention of frontline workers. You see on the left side of the screen some of the things that were actually shared either in the employer peer learning or in the December quarterly. We're interested in entry-level worker retention. We're interested in talking about housing, childcare, and transportation struggles, in best practices for communication with employees to help them connect with available resources, and for approaches to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in retention-focused strategies. And there was overwhelming interest at our employer peer learning session to hear from Advocate Health and their relatively new Teammate Success Coach program. So we've already scheduled this learning event. Bridget Bean runs this program at Advocate Health. We're going to host it on April 11th as a lunch and learn from 12 to 1. This is an in-house coaching program for newly hired frontline teammates experiencing personal and professional barriers. So the success coaches provide holistic, individualized coaching, wraparound support, career advising, and essential skills training for their first 90 days of employment. And I know that this program has been around for about 2 years now and has served over 200 people so far. So we're now at the stage where Advocate has some data to share, some lessons learned. So I'm going to drop the registration for that in the chat. Again, you can always find our upcoming meetings or events. If you're not sure when it is, always look on our website. They'll always be there. But the registration is in the chat. Please join us for that. And now our next 3 topics, pay attention because we're going to go into breakout rooms. You're going to choose one of these 3 topics that you would like to share some insights, some questions. We'd love your help planning these learning events. So we want to know, what are you observing on the ground? What are the current challenges and opportunities? And what do you want to see in a learning event? So the first of those is building the case for internal career pathways. How do we make the business case for advancement support programs, and how do we generate internal buy-in? So there were a couple of responses about how managers support their frontline staff in opportunities to advance, and how leadership supports their employees in opportunities to advance. That has to do with this topic. There are also a couple of responses about building that ROI. What is the business case? What are the incentives that we can talk about? How do we talk about the ROI and in measurements? How are we using the data to build the business case for these programs? So if you're interested in talking about this learning agenda topic, go to the business case for pathways breakout room in just a moment. The second one is best practices for transitioning individuals from internship or education environments into employment. So this was a big topic of the education and training breakout room at the peer learning session in February. They talked a lot about best practices for transitioning employees from internships or education to employment, particularly candidate selection, buy-in from internal departments, and choosing quality or recommended training providers. Something that came up in the December quarterly was supporting a comprehensive medical assistant externship that leads to employment. And something that's relevant is, how do we best leverage collaboration and community partnerships to implement programming like this? So if you're interested in talking about this, join the Education to Employment breakout room in just a moment. And then finally, building an effective, inclusive hiring strategy team. Who needs to be there, both internally and externally? Things that were talked about at the peer learning event were the need for stronger alignments between recruiters and hiring managers. Also investing in community liaisons or people internally who are solely focused on building those community partnerships. Another thing that came up was what sort of knowledge these teams need to have, or what sort of practices they need to be following. We're interested in info around, how adjusting job descriptions or requirements or background improves hiring or expands diversity. And we're also interested in the impact of unconscious bias training. So if you're interested in talking about this, join the Inclusive Hiring Teams breakout room. So we are going to do 15 minutes in these breakout rooms. I'm going to open all of them now. And so you should see a choice in your screen to join either business case for pathways, education to employment, or inclusive hiring teams. Does everyone see a choice? We do. Great. Go forward. And I know my Sasha, are you able to join? Welcome back, everyone. We had some good conversations. Looks like we've got about everybody back. Kylan, since you are just to my right, will you report out first and share what did you talk about with the business case for building internal career pathways? What resonated with that group?
Yeah, so thinking through what really building that story, and I think the fact that there's multiple aspects to building the story. So obviously there's a desire for the data, like how can we pull the numbers, really prove that there is a real return on investment because the retention rate's getting better and all that kind of stuff. So that really tangible story, but then having both the quantitative and qualitative side of the story. So pulling together case studies that really help articulate how this happens and what does it really look like. And they really wanted to hear success stories that were really honest about what was difficult about the process, but what really allowed people to get over those barriers, and really what allowed to give the support to the manager levels to make sure that they know how to support frontline workers, and also to have a culture for wanting their frontline workers to move up and potentially move on from those positions, and really helping change that cultural mindset as well. So those were kind of like the big things we talked about.
Wonderful. I hear ideas that CHWC can pursue, and certainly some good ideas for the learning events. Anna, would you like to report out on the Inclusive Hiring Teams group? What did you talk about?
Absolutely. So we had a really good conversation around, where does the pipeline start? And it starts with our community. So really making sure that we understand the barriers and the gaps towards reaching our community members, understanding who our community is, making sure that we're partnering with organizations that are trusted leaders in the community, and then kind of greasing the rails of that pipeline all the way from recruitment to leadership positions to make sure that the folks that we're recruiting have the training that they need, both professional and kind of soft skills training as well as any needs that they have related to, you know, unmet social needs, childcare, transportation, et cetera, that we're addressing those barriers so that they have opportunities to succeed in those roles. So I think there's lots of stuff that we can learn from and bring to that conversation.
Wonderful, great ideas. And Sasha, what did we talk about in the education to employment transition?
I think there were a lot of ideas offered in terms of really looking at the clarity of pathway. It's really starting even before with specifically internship programs. There's a lot of supporting high school students that were offered in the ideas, and really ways to support those interns by way of additional funding, capacity building, supporting those students who like starting in high school, engaging them through college or after, with connecting with them, employers more intentionally, de-siloing all of that, really supporting students in ways that are meaningful and relevant by taking account into the conditions that they're encountering, and upskilling students really for the qualifications for the positions they're seeking. So it's really a lot, I think, of connecting with and having employers connect with individuals earlier on to really best understand what their needs are, and then wrapping that around with the funding strategies and aligning and creating those pathways with training providers. So I think future topics that, at least through some of the initial voting, was really looking at funding and career pathway building. So hopefully we can see more of that.
Great. And I can hear some learnings to bring into our Good Jobs Challenge community of practice there too.
Sure.
Wonderful conversations. Thank you all. I will be reviewing those slides and using them to plan these events. I just put a link in the chat. If you feel like you're doing one of these 3 things well, you have a program at your organization that you'd like to present at one of these learning events, please go ahead and nominate yourself. Or if it's someone else, you know, you're not promising them, you're just suggesting them, and I'll reach out to talk to anyone who fills out that form to discuss these learning events. So I welcome any and all of your ideas there. And I know we have a few newcomers, so I'm just going to put this link in the chat again as well. We do have one learning event already scheduled for April 11th. It's about Advocate Health's Teammate Success Coaching Team. They have success coaches for frontline workers to help support their retention. It's a great program that I'm excited to learn more about. So with that, we're going to move on to a couple of community partner presentations. Both of these are opportunities to partner and just really interesting initiatives to learn about. But before we go there, I just want to say we have our next 2 quarterly meetings are going to be in person. So if you enjoyed this interaction in a breakout room, it's going to be even better in person. One in June, one in September. Those are on the website. For some reason, I'm blanking on the June date. It is June 11th. I'm hoping it will be at Malcolm X if the space is available. If not, I'll try to find another space in the medical district. But keep those in mind. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Rhiannon Clifton, who is the Senior Director at the University of Illinois Clinical Laboratory Workforce Development Program. And Rhiannon, you should be able to share your screen, or Hope should be able to as well.
Okay, let's give this a try. Can everyone see the title slide? Yes. Great. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, April and the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative for having me today. I'm Rhiannon Clifton, and I'm here to talk about a new initiative that the University of Illinois system is offering. We've been working on this for the past year plus as we transitioned from doing COVID-19 testing with Shield, Illinois across the state. We had set up 10 labs and had a really hard time staffing them throughout the pandemic and even after. And so, or after the peaks, I guess. And so we then set out to build a workforce development program that would help expand the pipeline. So I'm here to talk to you today, talk with you about a couple different ways that we can help your organization to expand that pipeline. Let's see if I can get my computer to cooperate, maybe. There we go. All right, so as you might know, there's a critical shortage of up to 25,000 lab professionals in the US, and obviously that affects companies, employees, and importantly, patients. So we, like I said, set out to create a program to help that. The time to fill those vacant positions is often 4+ months. And the number one reason that we found was a lack of qualified applicants. So we put together really an apprenticeship program that we can deploy either at our lab here or with a partner organization in your lab. And we also have additional workforce development offerings that we've been working on for the last few months as well. So our lab is in the medical district in the University of Illinois at Chicago incubator laboratory facility. We spent about $3.5 million upgrading the lab. So we have lots of molecular and next generation sequencing capabilities. So we can deploy an apprenticeship here or in your location, as I said. These are some of the testing assays that we can do if you wanted to partner with us to run tests. We can also put together a proposal if you have a molecular or next generation sequencing testing need. We're particularly interested in non-invasive prenatal testing, but we'll put together proposals for any next generation sequencing or molecular testing that you may want. The program is run by laboratory and training professionals that have extensive experience. Our lab team trained about 200 people during the pandemic on the job, on the bench, as well as with didactic sessions, and we've adapted that to be more broad and deployable at multiple organizations. So this is our laboratory and training leadership team. I'm going to share these slides, but I just wanted to illustrate that we do have a great team that has extensive experience in these areas, as well as, working with educational institutions and recruiting participants or employees as well. So what does this training and development look like? So the apprenticeship itself is, we've designed it to be 1 year to help with particularly those who may not have an MLS degree from an accredited program. The 1 year in the training environment would help them to be able to sit for an ASCP certification. The technical training modules, as well as professional development modules for essential skills, are listed here and would cover both high complexity and moderate complexity testing. So we could recruit from anyone with a high school diploma or equivalent on the moderate complexity side and do a credentials review to ensure CLIA competency or CLIA regulations for the high complexity testing. So our staff is used to doing that and would also measure progress and do weekly assessments to ensure that the participants were getting the materials. So what we can do in our lab is, give them the beginning amount of training and then deploy them in your lab or start in your lab from the beginning, but work with you on recruiting needs and getting those participants in, and we can help from the beginning really through the whole year. But in addition to the apprenticeship program, we've put together some training programs that will help with if you wouldn't want to do an entire apprenticeship, we've got ways to help reduce employee fatigue around training and burnout, to deploy either train the trainer or other trainings with your recruiting, HR, other areas that are involved in things like here we have the employee retention, and all of these different sessions that are listed would be 90-minute or, you know, depending on what the needs are. But this is more of a consultative track, but really helping with all things employee retention in the lab. The next one we have, very importantly, DEIB. And we've got, again, these are all 90-minute sessions, and, you know, we understand that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging really goes a long way for employee success, as well as helping with things like fatigue and burnout. And so, again, these can be deployed either via Zoom and or in person at your lab, and really encompass those DEIB areas. Next, the essential professional skills that we talked about, things like professionalism, conflict management, time management, things like that, that folks may not be getting in the classroom or in a traditional clinical training program. And so we can offer these as well. We offered 49, I think, sessions in about a 3-month period when we were with Shield, and they were really well received, and folks really appreciated and learned a lot from just being able to go through these topics. And then finally, we have our Train the Trainer series, and this can be both in the classroom or on Zoom or on the bench. So there's a couple of different slides here on the training the trainer, but really what we found and what we discovered when we were training our trainers is that with some training and practice, it really helps reduce that fatigue of training the new hires or folks that may not have had as much experience in the lab. So there's all these sessions, again, that could be via Zoom or in person. And then on the bench. So training bench work, observing, pipetting practice, writing SOPs. There's quite a few things that we can help with on the bench as well to help your staff train new folks. And I know we're running a little short on time, so I want to be sure to allow for questions, but really, we've been working over the past year on relationships with academic institutions around the state, as well as community organizations. But if you are with an academic institution and you're interested in rotations or internships, things like that, we can put training programs together for that as well on the clinical or the research side. And then, you know, we've got a lot of organizations that are supportive of the program and have been helping us with feedback along the way, including some that aren't necessarily workforce development, like the ASCP Board of Certification. We've been meeting with them to help illustrate ways toward certification if you're not from a traditional MLS program. So really, industry partnership is going to be key to be able to help increase the pipeline, especially as we think about non-traditional pathways. And again, we are happy to serve as a reference lab in molecular or next generation sequencing. We can bring this program in-house to your lab or put together a bespoke training program for your lab in any or all of the areas that I covered here in the presentation. So really, we've got the lab space and can use that for assay processing or training, or both. We've got the laboratory and apprenticeship leadership team ready to deploy the equipment and the ability to do the molecular or next generation sequencing testing, and the program ready to launch. So what we really need are industry partners that want to deploy the program or outsource assays to the lab, and really would be, open to hearing what organizational needs you might have that we could support. So really, at this point, I can open it up for questions, or there's my contact information as well if you would like to schedule a meeting with me or a member of my team to discuss.
Thank you, Rainey. And yes, we will be sending out all of these slides tomorrow, so you can dive into them in a little bit more detail. But we have some time for questions. Looks like Levi has one in the chat. What has been your biggest challenge so far?
Honestly, with the model that we've developed, our biggest challenge has been getting assays into the lab so that we can train folks in our lab. Other than that, it's really I'd say the second biggest challenge is kind of understanding and wrapping our heads around collectively how to, get to that certification point. If an apprentice didn't come through a traditional MLS program. And so being able to work with ASCP on that, and lab leaders throughout the state and the region on, what the needs are and what the flexibility might be. It's I think a challenge, and many of you may have experienced this too, in that some of the MLS programs are shrinking, but the need for laboratory scientists and laboratory technicians is growing. And so how do we bridge that gap? And being able to kind of figure that out with all the regulations that exist for good reason has been challenging as well.
Anyone feel free to raise your hand or put a question in the chat. So I know that you need more tests to run. So everyone on here who works for a hospital system, getting this slide deck in front of your lab departments would be really helpful to bolster this program. But I know most of the folks on this call are more their workforce development, folks, perhaps an HR role, who are thinking about talent development. It seems like there are possibly a few different ways that they could partner with you. Could you just work through those very succinctly for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, April. So on the workforce development side, broadening the pipeline, really what our goal is to get more people interested in jobs in the lab or careers in the lab, and broaden that pipeline to get them into the lab. So ways that organizations can work with us. We're happy to provide sessions on how to train in the lab, both on the bench and in the classroom. And also then the other training in the lab for DEIB, helping to advise on things like employee retention and things like that, and opportunities for advancement, continued education. So we're happy to put together a training program on any of those. We're also happy to help with recruiting efforts in those underserved populations. So to deploy this apprenticeship at your lab or at ours. So really, if you have needs where you're trying to broaden the laboratory pipeline, we're happy to work with you on those training programs, whether that be in your lab or in ours. Hopefully that cleared it up. And those can be anywhere from, we could come in and do a couple of days of training to a whole year-long training program.
Shonda.
Good morning. So I'm Shonda from Loyola Medicine. My question is, so I just want to be clear. So what you're saying is someone could potentially do an internship without having gone to school to be an MLS or MLT.
On the moderate complexity side. So
Okay.
only on the moderate complexity side would they not have to have any college education. For high complexity, we would do a credentials review, a transcript review to make sure they had the number of biology and chemistry classes required to be able to perform high complexity tests, and then would provide that training to help get them, you know, between, you know, if they had a regular or, you know, more general biology degree and not an MLS degree, to bridge that gap. And so we've done that with Shield with about 200 people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and last question two more questions, and then we got to move on to our final one. Very quickly before you, Tara. Viv is asking in the chat, if an organization wants to implement this program, what requirements are needed for their lab?
It really would depend on what their requirements are for, you know, who they're trying to hire, right? So we would need to be able to have access to the lab and come in and train people. But if you had, you know, needs in molecular testing, you would just need to have those assays. Really, it's just a match with whatever you want on the training piece. So we have the didactic sessions in molecular, blood bank, histology, and microbiology. So can come in and train on any of those, but would just need then access to the lab to be able to do the on-the-bench training. And we'd be happy to chat through, you know, what that might look like at your organization.
Tara?
Yeah, I think you just answered my question, but that's what I was going to ask when you talked about bridging the gap in the training for those who may not have exactly the level of training. I was going to ask what that bridge looks like. How long are those programs? Are those just specific training certifications, or is it like, what does that look like? And
right. So yeah, we've developed the apprenticeship to be 1 year because that is the amount of time that's needed for some of the ASCP certifications. So we can go anywhere from like I said, a couple of days of specific training for folks, where if you have a gap that you need to be, you know, have filled, or the 1 year long apprenticeship to help them get that bench time that they would need to get the ASCP, to sit for ASCP certification.
And you all cover those costs, or?
There are programs that will, okay. And we would work with our partners to, you know, make sure that, you know, work out the cost of the program from the apprentice support through, you know, auxiliary support for those apprentices.
Thank you, Rhiannon. I encourage everyone to, you know, get the right folks together to meet with Rhiannon and her team to learn more and to ask all your questions. We're going to move on to our next presentation. Rhiannon, I do think there's another question in the chat that you could respond to.
Okay.
There. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And maybe drop your email in the chat too, just so folks have.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about a new apprenticeship in healthcare. There are lots of incentives to get involved with registered apprenticeships. So I encourage everyone to have those conversations and see if we can get that help bolster that program. And I know we have a shortage of lab technicians and we all need them. Okay, now we're going to move on to our final community partner presentation today. It's the Robert Owens, the Senior Advisor for Public Safety with the Civic Committee of Chicago. And also maybe Hope Allen. Hope, I think you have permission to share your screen. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, April. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. Already, you know, lots of interesting, you know, ways for this group to engage on the shared mission. So I don't know if it'll be an advantage or a disadvantage to go last. I guess remains to be seen. But I'm really glad to be able to join your meeting today and share with you what the Civic Committee is doing. So let me, April gave my name and title. I'm Senior Advisor for Public Safety with the Civic Committee. I'm here with Hope Allen from the Boston Consulting Group, who's been working with the Civic Committee on the initiative we want to talk about this morning. So let me give just a little bit of background on what the Civic Committee is and what we do, and how our workforce and hiring efforts in this space are related to a broader public safety plan. And then I'll say a few words about why we thought it was so important to present to this group and have this group be aware of what we're doing. So the Commercial Club of Chicago is a club of business leaders in the city, chief executives and leadership from major employers in the city. Many of the organizations represented in this group and the Healthcare Workforce Collaborative are members, but not all, or are represented in the membership. And the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club is a vehicle through which the Commercial Club, the business leaders in the city, will pursue particular policy objectives that they feel like they can make a positive influence on. And fairly recently, the Civic Committee formed a task force around public safety, sort of recognizing that there were levers that the business community could pull, acting in concert to improve public safety in the city. And so, engaging with the Boston Consulting Group, the Civic Committee came up with 5 pillars, 5 strategies, and hope we can go to the next page. We have just sort of a short narrative account of where the Civic Committee landed on this public safety strategy. 2 of the 5 shared commitments have to do with hiring. So in this sense, we're similar to where the HEAL initiative is focused, hiring as a lever over public safety specifically. And this is so central to the Civic Committee's plan because it's really about what the business community can do, not just healthcare organizations, but the business community broadly in Chicago to move the needle on public safety. Ashley mentioned at the very beginning of this meeting and in introduction that we were focused on hiring from CVI programs, community violence intervention programs. That is part of it, but there's also a sort of a broader focus on hiring from a set of target geographies, a set of 20 community areas on the south and west sides of the city that have been historically disinvested. And these hiring initiatives, as the plan is sort of written, there's 2 hiring initiatives, one with the focus on CVI, the other with the focus on hiring broadly, and that includes apprenticeship programs that get people into high quality health careers. It includes hiring through Skills for Chicagoland's Future and CARA programs that I know many of you have established relationships with. Those 2 hiring initiatives are tied to other elements of the strategic plan, economic investment and development planning in those same 20 target community areas, and scaling the community violence intervention work of organizations like Chicago CRED and CP4P, part of Metropolitan Family Services. So that's a little bit about the Civic Committee, how the Civic Committee is trying to engage on this problem of public safety in the city, and how that brings us to employment as an anchor, particularly for the CVI population, but across the south and west sides that can really make a difference on public safety. There's a few reasons we wanted to present to this group. We recognize this is already a densely connected network. You all are here talking about workforce development. Perhaps many of you involved in the HEAL initiative already talking about workforce development specifically as a public safety strategy. Many of you already have connections with our partners in Skills for Chicagoland's Future, maybe in some of the CVI programs as well. And Rush, Northwestern Medicine, University of Chicago Medicine, we've already engaged in this initiative specifically. So one reason we're here is because we want to learn from you. We certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel. Seeing this collaborative, this roundtable is something we've talked about, that we hope can exist across other industries as well, and that we can develop to a place where employers and HR teams are working together on their hiring objectives in the way that you all already are. Because you're already working on this problem, we also wanted, there to be a broad awareness of this effort, so that many of you working for organizations that are not members of the Civic Committee or the Commercial Club necessarily, outside of the ones that I just mentioned, we would very much welcome your participation. We're working with employers that are not Civic Committee members, as well as those that are. And what we can offer, what the Civic Committee can offer to employers in this effort is connections to workforce development organizations, the potential multiplier effect of not just a focus on hiring, but a focus on economic development, where we're trying to push corporations to concerted investments in the South and West Side that can bring auxiliary benefits to hiring and other sorts of development. And then also, and what I'll do with the remainder of the time here is show you a few other slides that we use for employer engagement to share with you the structure that is really for us a work in progress of how we're presenting the options to employers. There is the pathway where we are working with organizations on hiring from the CVI programs, a population that needs a lot of support, a lot of sort of intervention and services beyond the point of hire to be successful and to remain employed is what we're seeing and what the CVI programs have found. But also, for employers where that's not a great fit, where they don't have roles that really fit the CVI population, giving them models and examples of the apprentice network, of skills as a partner, and so on. So, like I said, recognizing there's many familiar faces on the call. Some of you we're already working with. Some of you we are not. But I want to share a little bit about how we're structuring our pitch to employers to engage in this effort, and would welcome anybody who's interested to reach back out to me. I'll share my information and hopes at the end here, and would also welcome your advice, because I recognize many of you have been working on this for a long time. So I hope given time, we don't have to go through every page. Maybe we can skip to page 3. This is just a visual of the overall strategic plan. So you have a top line goal. This is really oriented around public safety and around what the business community can do on public safety. As I said, as it's written, there's 2 hiring initiatives, but there's more of a continuity than a radical break between those efforts. We can go to the next page. I think I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, and spending time talking about why it's a good idea to proactively seek out hiring from disinvested communities, from the 20 community areas that are the target geography for the Civic Committee. But this is where we start with employers, and when we're engaging, if any of you want to follow up with a one-on-one or connect us with somebody else who might be interested in this initiative, we want to start from a couple of different angles. The benefit to doing this, the models that already exist, employers that are seeing a lot of success in CVI hiring or in apprenticeship programs or other sorts of entry-level roles sourced from these communities, and sort of champion both the business case and the social good that this can achieve. We can go on, hope, to the next page. Getting a little more tactical, this is what we're really hoping to develop over the coming weeks and months is a matrix of options or possible engagements for employers, where we can come to collaboratives like this, come to roundtables, but also get into conversations one-on-one with employers, and give for employers that are not already doing this kind of work, give a really structured and guided set of options. If there's a commitment at the top level to do South and West Side hiring, then to follow that up with here are, you know, the different pathways that you can pursue. Here are the different workforce development partners you can work with. You know, we would need to learn from employers, but also connect them with peers in the industry. What type of jobs would be most relevant for this type of hiring, and to build from there to something that you know, really empowers the employer to pursue one or multiple pathways. Hope, let's skip ahead a little bit to page 10. This is just showing you some of the concrete detail behind this sort of schematic on the last page that we looked at. The numbers here that you're looking at are numbers that are specific to the Civic Committee. So the number of Civic Committee hires since last year when we launched this initiative out of the CVI programs through Cara Collective, which is one of our early partners, and Skills for Chicagoland's Future, which is the other workforce development partner that we've started this with. That's certainly not going to be the limit, the extent of sourcing that we do, the sort of demands, or the supply side, excuse me, of candidates looking for roles. We're, you know, expanding that partnership as we speak. But that's where we started. And that's the next row there is the level of engagement we have from Civic Committee companies. So a couple of things for you all that I just want to point out here. There's the healthcare industry has been a leader here already, and we thank you for that. Those of you individually and institutionally who have worked with us on this. There's you know, a great density of good fit roles in healthcare. We're finding there's a great willingness and a great kind of maturity of the HR operation and the you know, all the supports that you need to make this successful at Rush, at Northwestern, at University of Chicago, and I'm sure at many of your other institutions as well, although we don't have visibility into each other yet if you're not part of the Civic Committee. But we see a lot of potential to grow, and we want to grow this initiative, you know, coming to a collaborative like this and finding partnership with organizations we're not partners with yet. There's also you know, I think one lever that I hope is interesting to you all is that this initiative reaches beyond healthcare as well. And so there's other sorts of companies that are engaged, and we're trying to be part of the matching process for positions that exist across industries that as you see on the slide. Hope, let's do one more page and then I'll stop and we'll have the last few minutes for questions or engagement. Not exactly an apples to apples comparison. Oh, we can go back one, thanks. Between our workforce development partners like Skills and Care and the CVI programs and the Apprentice Network, but there's been a lot of talk about apprenticeships today, and we also have sort of recognized the significance of the apprentice pathway to achieve the Civic Committee's goals of the top line goal over 5 years is to get 20,000 people hired in the South and West Side. So again, healthcare is a leader here. There's other Civic Committee members, Accenture and Aon, that have really been leaders in developing this apprentice network. I saw some of you at the event the other day at Northwestern Medicine, and this is just one more angle, sort of a complement to the last slide we looked at that we want to pursue. So let me pause there. I saw at least a little bit of activity in the chat, so give me a moment if there were questions that were posed.
I don't see any
Not
questions
yet.
in the chat right now, but anyone can feel free to put something in the chat, raise your hand. I also know we have a few folks on the call who are already involved in this initiative. If you have a few words to say about that. I think that, you know, Robert, what you said is true, is that healthcare is a leader in this space. And, you know, the systems on this call are some of the largest employers in the region. You are all, you know, actively involved in the workforce development system and have inclusive hiring initiatives already. I sort of see what the Civic Committee is doing as an opportunity to gain more support for what you're already doing, more recognition, more capability to measure and to talk about the community support that you that your hiring initiatives are supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, April. And you know, there's lots of benefits. I think, you know, whether or not your organization is a member of the Civic Committee, we want to talk to you about this and engage, understand what you're doing. You know, as you mentioned, April, just having better data and better information about, you know, what makes healthcare organizations successful when they pursue this kind of effort will be helpful to the larger mission, which, you know, is very strongly shared between the Civic Committee and the Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. So I dropped my email and phone number in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. I believe April shared a version of these slides in advance of today's meeting. It is a constant work in progress, so you should have a version. If you want to learn more, then please just reach out.
Thank you so much for coming, Robert. Do have to move on to community announcements for the last few minutes, but Robert's put his contact information in the chat. I'd be happy to connect you. Those slides will be on the website tomorrow, and your colleagues at some of your other systems are already engaged in this initiative, and I'm sure would be happy to answer your questions about what that looks like or what that means if you'd like to hear from your peers. And Robert, I think there is one more comment in the chat if you'd like to respond there.
Yes, thank you for that. I see a comment from Melissa on programs aiming to target youth. Yes, you know, I don't have as much to say about that as I wish that I might. We have, you know, trying to get our arms around so many things. One place we have drawn a boundary is that we're not really looking at youth employment or youth programming right now, but it certainly does butt up against it. And Melissa, I'd love to talk more sort of about how those things are complementary, because, you know, there's more, there's leverage to be gained, I think, from those who are working on youth employment to be coordinating activity with apprentice programs and early career programs.
Absolutely. We only have a couple minutes left, so just wanted to highlight some upcoming events. A partner event hosted by HC3, the Healthcare Council of Chicago, in recognition of Women's History Month. It's part of their Future of Work series, Empowering Women in the Workplace, Equitable Compensation and Wellbeing. I know that Tara Driver from Women Employed will be participating in that panel, so I'm excited for that event. Like I mentioned a couple times in the call, we have a learning event on Advocate Success Coaching Program in April, and our next quarterly meeting is in person. Does anyone else have a community announcement to share in our last 2 minutes?
Good morning, this is Xiaofan from OAI. So I'm gonna share our high school senior hiring events that will be organized on April 27th. It's a Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Rich High School STEAM campus. So that fair is for high school graduate to capture all kinds of internship or job opportunities so that they can make informed decision about what they want to do on day one after graduation. Also, there's opportunity for us to use Good Job Challenge grant or our Opportunity Works or other grant opportunities to offer additional training, internships, or support to ensure that your interns or new hires could get into their desired career pathway with all the skills they need. I'm gonna put the registration information in the chat. Thank you, April.
Marcos, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've had a chance to share here in the past. We're currently recruiting for our next cohort called Generation Work, which is in partnership with CWFA and the CARE Collective, which focuses on hiring and retaining young adults of color. We've had a number of folks in the Zoom space that have already joined in the past, but if you're interested, I put the information in the chat. You can reach out to me as well. Thanks, April.
Thank you all. And I'll make sure that all of these go out in our next newsletter, which will go out either this week or early next week. So I'll make sure you have information there as well. Okay, it is 10 o'clock. Thank you so much, Robert and Hope from the Civic Committee. Thank you, Rhiannon, and your whole team for coming and presenting as well. Thank you all for joining, much appreciated. And I really look forward to seeing you in person on June 11th. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you, April.
Good to see you all. Happy spring.